do whatever you want either, I guarantee that. And there are whole big systems that you have to learn. And I met a prosecutor earlier. I sometimes think his job is like being a brain surgeon. So as a defense attorney, it's tough. It's very complex. You're working with these very complex systems, and you're trying in these open areas, I think, to say, which is going to work out better? From my point of view, no. From the point of view of the document.
Let's say a question from over there. That lady right there, please.
I think you were involved in the sentencing guidelines that came out this year. And that prior question reminded me of that. Do you feel overall that they are successful, and did judges lose their ability to use the discretion that maybe we wish some of them had back again?
Hard to say. The sentencing guidelines were quota reform. And before these federal guidelines had come about, most students of the subject thought we've gone way too far in the direction of the different cases differently. And in California, there was something called the California Adult Authority, and they would sentence people to prison, and then it would be an indeterminate sentence, and then eventually a parole board or something like that was supposed to let them out when they were, quote, cured, end quote. And in many instances, vast numbers, they weren't let out at all, or many years. So people thought that was a failure. So they said, the next thing we'll try is those guidelines. And the guidelines will try to treat similar cases similarly and say to the judge, Judge, if you have a typical case, follow the guideline. And if you don't, depart. Well, that's easier said than done, and they've heard when I go and talk about them, as I did because I was on the commission, because they were about as popular among the judiciary as cholera. See, because every judge thinks he knows the answer. If he sentences this person to 10 months, he thinks it's 10 months. Otherwise, why would he choose 10 months? I mean, nobody, all right, but the problem is there's somebody in a different place, same person, 10 years. All right, so try to develop a system which says you have a typical case, this is your guideline. You have an atypical case, depart, and it will be reviewed in the Court of Appeals. Great in principle. It's taken many years to put these into practice, and they're filled with problems. And Congress, in the meantime, has come along and had mandatory minimum sentences. Everybody has to go to jail for a certain time. You'll get a case that doesn't warrant it, you know, and you can't depart. But anyway, I probably said enough to show you I'm uncertain. I'm still an optimist. I think the great thing about the guidelines is it should focus the attention of the judges and the system, not so much upon are you guilty or innocent. That, of course, is important. But vast numbers of people plead guilty. And what about those people? And the question is, what do you do with that person? What should happen to that person? And orienting the system in that direction, I think, is a plus. And my hope is, still it's a hope, that eventually this will work out. And it doesn't, well, Justice Scalia's joke about the bear is applicable here too.
You have a question over there.
I'd like to ask you about the health care, the Constitution, but you can't comment on that. So let me ask you about one case that has been decided, and that's the one where parts of the campaign finance reform bill were thrown out and corporations got the right to give as much money as they want to fund campaigns. Can you tell me something about the thinking?
It's actually an interesting case to ask about. I was in the dissent. I was among the four, and John Stevens wrote a very strong dissent. But I want people to say, and I don't want to be too convincing on the other side, I want you to see there is an argument the other way too. And it's really this, it says the Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. And the people who were in the majority have always thought that the campaign finance regulation in general abridges the freedom of speech. And the argument, which is a perfectly sound argument, except I don't think it's right, but I mean, it's close. The argument is just simply this, that you say, well, money isn't speech. Of course money isn't speech. But you try running a campaign without money. He says there are people who want to express themselves, they want to get money. You say, well, what about this really rich person? Say, once you get into the business, said Learned Hand, one of our greatest judges, once you get into the business of saying you're going to say this person has less speech so we can give the other person more speech, you've started down a slippery slope that has no end. And moreover, the members of Congress or others are experts at writing very complicated things that in fact write themselves into office. So beware. All right? That's the theme. It's not a terrible argument. I believed and joined the opinion that said that you can sometimes limit the vast amounts of money that some people can give so they don't drown out the people who have just as strong views. You see the point here. It's two arguments that aren't, and of course I think I was on the right side, and I don't think they should have started their side, the thing with corporations. But nonetheless, the best way is you read the opinions, you'll see it's complicated, you see we have difficult questions, and not surprisingly, I tend to think when I dissent that the dissent is completely right.
Let's take a question on this side. This lady, right? Oh, is there somebody there already? Excuse me. Promise.
I understand your point is that the power of law or the power of the court is proportional to the support that people give to the process rather than the outcome of the law.
Yes.
Now, as I see today, we are disintegrating in a sense of a support of the process, and we're looking at a politicized court, or we're giving a politicized view of the court, which I guess would be reducing the influence or power of the court. And in this time of trouble, I guess I'm asking you then to project what you see today into the oncoming future of this divided government.
Yeah, that's truly two questions, and I think they're both interesting.